When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching the Meta Show.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Meta Show. I'm your host Keith Stone, joined by Remaker Shadow as a co-host today. Dave Archer is on. He's going to be running things in the background. He's a little sleepy, a little tired, had a long week. So Remaker stepping in here for Dave. Yeah, Dave grew a beard. Dave is a completely different person today, actually. Dave is here. It's not Remaker, it's Dave Archer. There you go. Thanks, Remaker. He has. Yeah, have you? I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know why I can't. Your face is not coming to my mind right now. Probably because you're not on. This week we're going to be talking about. Obviously, everybody knows FanFest. Hopefully, if you don't know, FanFest is going on. It's been going on all week, and there's been a big announcement with a new Legion update and some really cool changes. But that's going to let me lead into something else because Remaker wasn't on our show last week. Dave was, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, we had a show where we had the FC Roundtable. And for those of you who joined us 2 weeks ago for that show and got to be a part of that and listen to some of the great feedback we got from different parts of different content creators in the game, we talked about some of the elements that are going to be rolled out in EVE Legion 2 weeks ago, which goes into my point of what we're doing with the Meta Show, talking about the current meta in the game and what you, the players of the game, want to see and want to see change, and what our content creators, EFC, the leaders of our groups that we all fly with, are doing with the game and what they want to see the game to make better. So 2 weeks ago, we had some call outs around balance changes like Surgical Strike, rolling back that update, right? Talking about increasing the viability of T2 Logi and Logi in general. And as we'll talk about here in the show in a minute, those are some of the very things we're going to see change. So definitely encourage you. We're going to have another, we'll talk about this in a little bit. We'll have another FC Roundtable soon. I'll talk about the end of the show, what that's going to look like. But really encourage, continue watching because we definitely are, hitting a little bit of the nail on the head there, tooting our own horn a little bit on some of the changes and being in touch with the community, and definitely appreciate we can't do that without your feedback, which brings me into our housekeeping stuff, right? The Meta Show is doing a rotating host schedule for Season 6, so I don't know how much we're rotating right now. It seems to be pretty consistent with myself and Dave, and then we've got Remaker, who does come on and help us as well. We have a survey. Let us know how we're doing, okay? Variety content is changing, all right? Let us know what you think you want to see on the channel. We're reviewing content now, and we want to deliver more things that you want to see on our channel, which kind of goes to my point. We're moving away a little bit from the, the goon, sound the goon horn, to talking more about the EVE meta. So if there's anything else you want to see, maybe there's a guest that you want to see in the show, fill out that survey, let us know, and we can definitely get into that. And then lastly, the team is recruiting stream producers, EVE streamers, and variety streamers. So INN, importantly, getting those streamers on with INN, that kind of thing, reach out to myself, Dave, Remaker, anybody, any of us, and we can definitely get you hooked up there. Let's head on to our main topic, our main show here, Dave. All right, we're going into our main show, and we're going to start this out, Remaker, with, I think, maybe the cooler. There's one of these two ships, the two new ship announcements, right? So there's a lot of stuff, and we're going to get into the balance stuff, but I want to start out with the two new cool ships, right? We've got the Barbagoa. Is that how you said it? I think it's Barbagoa. Sounds like it's almost like
Barbaroga.
Barbarossa. Barbaroga. There you go. There you go, Remaker. That's
Yeah.
why I can't talk. I'm a silly American. It's probably some, I can't even say it right. And the Sarathiel, I think is the right way to say it. The Angel Dreadnought and the Trig Marauder. So the Trig Marauder, Dave, do we have the stats on the Marauder there that we can post to the stream so our viewers, if you haven't seen the announcement, awesome. So the Trig Marauder there is gonna have 8 low slots, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Marauders, but is the only armor Marauder that is gonna have 8 slow slots. Low slots. The Paladin, the Chronos, at least the Paladin I know has 7. I believe the Chronos maybe even has 6. Could be 7. So it's gonna have 8 low slots. Still a lot of low slots for activities, right? It's gonna have 4 mid slots and I believe 5 high slots with a Bastion module. Okay, so it's going to do, I think somebody said in the chat there, Kane, 1k DPS out over 120 kilometers. So with that additional optimal range bonus we're going to see with that Marauder, you add on the Bastion module, which gives you an additional optimal range. Oh, and by the way, this thing's going to get a tracking bonus as well. It is going to be a monster of Marauder. And I think in Remaker, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think this is going to get nerfed pretty soon, pretty quickly. I don't know how long these stats will stay and that kind of thing, but I think this is going to be a pretty big Marauder and it might usurp the Vargar and ESS stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think first of all, I would like to say, Kate, it's a pleasure being here, and I'm so excited about all these rebalancing, all these changes. I was CCP surprised me. I mean, I was expecting, last year we had Equinox update, and I thought, it, we're not going to see anytime soon any major changes, right? You're going to, do some tweaks to balance, and now they dropped the ball again. And like you suspected, about some their rebalancing issues. So and we can definitely see that CCP is taking our feedback. We'll come that in a moment. I don't want to spoil the agenda, uh, but I'm so freaking excited. And regarding Babaroga, I think definitely it's gonna be more for I think PvP ship. I don't, to be honest, I don't see it. It will depends on the cost of the blueprint, but I don't see it um being a major ship in the fleets. I don't see it being utilized often. I just, and since and I was surprised they still continue that way, where they want to see Marauders on active shield and active armors. It doesn't have the bonus on the armor plating or such. So and still considering that it will be more expensive than T1 Marauders, so to say. That's for sure. And then considering that once they go in in the Bastion, you cannot wrap them. I don't see the major utilization in a big fleet. It might be just me, right? But I think it's a good ship. It's gonna be, good PvP ship, but I don't see it as being as major, like widely
Yeah,
utilized.
I mean, we've seen Paladin, we've seen Marauder doctrines come out, and even the blocks. I think it was either Frat or Hordes run a Paladin doctrine, and that whole like without Bastion kind of kills it like a little bit. What I think some people don't realize though is that these ships, the bonuses that we see on the screen there, these ships get those bonuses, excuse me, outside of Bastion, so they still get a local armor rep bonus. They still get that damage bonus that you're going to see on the Barbaroga there. You're still going to get that tracking bonus. So what's really kind of wild about this ship is even outside of bashing, I think it's going to be a very strong battleship. So, to your point, you're like, hey, I don't know how effective this will be. And I think the cost will be a big driver on. I have a feeling this is going to cost as much as a T1 Dread when it comes out of the gate, if not more. Um, but the cost will be a big driver why you don't see it in the doctrine. But you don't necessarily need Bastion for these ships to still be monsters on the field. And I'm speaking from, my experience in the AT Paladins, and some of those tournament settings were dominated at least early on in theory crafting and practices and stuff, where you still got a really strong local rep and that kind of thing. And for those of you who don't know, I have Pyfo pulled up over here. As far as Bastion, what does it provide? It provides a 30% risk resist across the board. It also provides an optimal range bonus. and then it provides the rate of fire bonus, which will be key, really important for a Leshak to get spooled up faster. And then lastly, it provides an E-War bonus. It gives 100% resist to its E-War across the board. You still can E-War a Marauder when it clicks Bastion, but it's just not as effective as like normal E-Wars. So, and I think somebody asked in the chat, like, do we think CCP will change this before they roll it out? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, May 27th is the target date for Legion to roll out. So we got another few weeks for them to potentially, make some changes there. I don't know. I think they're gonna want to see it play in the real world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the best feedback. And also like I just want to add on the topic where you mentioned it was, we have seen the Paladins it's used in a pandemic horde, for example, right? But that was all prior when they, prior to the latest change when they had a bonus on the tank, right? They don't have that anymore. So I'm not, seeing that. Um and also to add on your point where you mentioned that they still have a DPS, of course they still have an alpha, but DPS is reduced, right? Because the cycle on the gun takes longer. And I see someone mention incursions. I mean, I couldn't think of the why would people use for incursions, because you need a bigger target, because you need to spool that damage, right? So if you're shooting a small frigates, you don't get a chance to spool that damage, so it's basically useless, so to say. I see it being utilized for bigger targets, let's say.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, definitely needs bigger targets. Definitely could see these if you want to go. Excuse me, if you want to go around and hit some skyhooks, maybe some Mentnoxes, and reinforce some stuff, and you had a handful of these, and you could probably go out and be a menace and reinforce them fairly quickly. Again, I think I really concerned as far as initially when they come out, the drawback is going to be these are going to be expensive. They are not going to be
Yeah.
they're not going to be cheap ships, that kind of thing. And Aliveron, I see that you called out the remote rep potential there. It does get the same remote rep bonus as the Leshak, which is that increased optimal range as well as a cap reduction. But my only concern is, do you think that it seems like you've done incursions there before, that with the remote reps in Bastion, obviously you can't remote rep your friends in Bastion. Is that something that would be a drawback there? Do you still think that, hey, the bonuses are really strong in this boat, that I would still use them in incursion even without Bastion, that the damage and the tracking bonus, that kind of thing is going to be key? So, really think that cat ears is really important. Yes, Ellie, maybe we'll get cat ears for him. I don't know. I don't think that's really important, but hey, whatever. Don't want to. I think this is a really exciting ship. I'm really excited about this Marauder. But another one that I'm really looking forward to is the Angel Dreadnought. There, right? Can we get the Angel Dreadnought on the screen there, Dave? I got that layout there. The Sarathiel. I can't, man. I can't say this stuff. When I FC and I call gates, I just make things up and hope everybody goes to the right gate. So forgive me for pronouncing this wrong, but gonna be a very strong dreadnought. I think the cool part about this that I want to highlight with this dreadnought is the fact that its ability to MJD while in Bastion, right? Also, yeah, 100% dictator. It looks really cool, looks really sexy. Like, I want to get this pirate dreadnought, this angel dreadnought. It's gonna be able to in MJD and Bastion, right? Or excuse me, not Bastion, but in Siege. And I believe I read somewhere, and I think it's on there as well, that it's also going to get a max speed bonus while Siege, meaning we're going to see the drift dreadnoughts come back, right? The old school, like, I think it was Big Miker drifting the Mimitar Dread there. I can't remember. I can't think of the name of it right now. But drifting the dreads, are we gonna see that come back? Remaker, what are your thoughts on this dread here that's coming out?
I think it's amazing. I'm a completely fan of the Angels. So I'm gonna definitely get one, but I don't see it as major change because all we're all we're doing here is creating another Cayman or another Chemos, right? Which is not being utilized because it's overpriced, way overpriced. I know they did some recently now, or they're planning to do it the next update regarding that, but it's a cool features. Everything is fine, right? But then, why would you risk I don't know, 80, 60, 80 billion for this ship, where you can get an I don't know, like almost a 10 a T1 or T2 dreadnoughts for that price, right? And if you get dropped, I mean, that MGD won't save you. And also the question would be, can you prevent that? Uh, Um, uh, can you prevent that MGD? Like, can you scram it? In or what if you're in a bubble, right? Can you still MGD? Because everyone has addictors around, right? Once you tackle the dreadnought, so I don't know. Like, all I see is right now good looking ship with the cool features, but same as what happened with other faction dreadnoughts and not being utilized. You can barely see them on the field.
Yeah, and Kane, it does have the same mechanic as a carrier, except the biggest difference here, and I want everybody, I got a little bit of clarity on this, is that it will not be able to take other ships with it when it MJDs. It does only do an MJD for local, so it will only MJD itself. As far as a capital MJD, it is not an MJD field like we see on carriers. So sorry, my nose is itchy today, so keep touching it. But yeah, no, and I think yes, an MJD, I think it's a cool mechanic on it. To me, I'm thinking finally I got my nano dread. I can move while siege and I can MJD away and shoot all these fun stuff. But you're absolutely right. When you're getting in and you're using a dread like a hall dread in that situation, typically, especially one as expensive as this will be, and we'll get to price in a minute. I see there's a couple people who've said the BPC prices have gone down, and we'll definitely get to that. But it's still going to be an expensive target. You get dropped on and you start getting a fight, someone's going to have a scram on you. And while you're going to focus, hey, yeah, I'm going to focus at scram, and maybe you might do something silly like put a warp stab, even if you can put warp stab on capitals, to try to negate that so you can still MJD. Someone's going to have a scram on you. And I think where the key comes in is it's able to still move while in siege. So I've had this happen. You don't have to move very fast on a cap somehow for people to just not pay attention anymore. But 100%. And by the way, Dave put a poll up for the new ships. Would love to hear what your favorite one's going to be. Which one are you going to try to get out of the gate as soon as these drop? Are you going to go for the Dread or are you going to go for the Marauder? I personally have already started training my Lashak skill book to 5 there so I can get into the Marauder. I will have probably the Trig Marauder. I've always loved the Trig boats. The Ikatursa Kikimora are some of my favorite ship models in the game. Love flying them in Nano. I think they're great. I am 100% going to go out and get a Trig Marauder and probably feed it within the first 5 days. So look for me, chat, out on the field, Keystone and Shalom. If you see me around flying in a Barbaroga, I'm probably by myself. I won't blob you, I promise. Shoot me a little bit, kill me. We'll have a good fights in local. So want to move into the Angel Dread. I know everybody's talked about, hey, BPCs, right? They're going to be cheaper. And that is one of the updates we're talking about as far as LP requirements for these Pirate Dreads. And then also the IS costs for those BPCs, which is going to bring us into our next topic, balance changes. And what I want to talk about first, because everybody always waits for last to talk about Logi. Every time I'm in fleets, we're always like, I don't want to do Logi. Nobody wants to do Logi. I'll end up having to fly Logi because I want to see Logi be successful. I want to make sure, as as a content creator and FC of myself in the past, I'm like, I understand how important it is for Logi. So when one of my favorite FCs out there, Alterari, is like, hey, I need more Logi boats. You know what? I suck it up and get out of my nightmare and get in a Bassi or whatever the heck it is we're flying, scimitars, and go out there. So for those of you Logi lovers, though, we're seeing some changes, and thank you, Dave, for getting those Logi changes up. We're going to go through them real quick. 10% bonus to the armor shield amount when you overheat. I think this is something you got to remember when you overheat. And people get confused on this, and I always thought it was a little funny. When an FC would call, like, say you're in an artillery doctrine, right? And you're like, everybody overheat on the first salvo. That isn't, it's your rate of fire. It's not your initial amount of damage. And with your Logi here in this circumstance, it's the same thing. Logi reps, when you heat them, it was how fast they rep. So you would rep more, but you would still miss. You're not getting the amount of HP out. So now Logi boats are going to get an additional 10% HP when they heat, which is really critical when some of the most important parts when you're SCing in Remaker, I'm sure you can talk to this. When you go in and you Sino in and you're starting to fight, it's probably that first minute, 30 seconds, that kind of thing, on saving whoever gets alphaed, because things start going downhill really quickly. And if you can stabilize in that first few minutes of a fight with some heat, you're going to come out on top maybe it's going to stabilize the
Exactly.
fight. You're not going to feed,
Exactly.
right? So really
And
asserting
especially,
that dominance early. Go ahead, buddy.
yeah, sorry about that. So I was about to say, especially for armor, right? So shield is very easy to catch up, right? It applies instantly, but we can see even the faxes are struggling with let's say healing the black opses, for example, right? Where when you have a huge alpha on enemy side, it's really hard because you have first a locking speed, and then you have your entire cycle, which is, let's say, 5 seconds, right, before it applies the armor. And if they have enough DPS, enough alpha, that ship is already dead. So I think that's gonna be really great point there, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And one of the other changes next is Savior implant. And someone talked about, I hate cap changes. You might like this. Go get Saviors. We might not need cap changes on Bassies, right? Or in Guardians. I don't know if that's the case, but a Savior implant is going to help you with that cap reduction. Well, not only is it going to help with the remote repair, reduce cycle time, it already has, it's going to reduce cap. So really exciting as far as that's concerned to see. Going to make the Scimitar stronger, right? If you're running Saviors, and a benefit to go out and get some Savior implants. I know, some people feel like I don't want to fly with implants. I fly in nullsec. You have to worry about bubbles. I want to tell you, man, I'm in high grade snakes 99% of the time, and I've gone through. It's been a while since I've lost my pod. So, okay, that's a lie. This alligator was the last time I lost that pod, but that was. Let's not talk about that, chat. Like we can leave that alone. But you're generally pretty safe. You're paying attention, that kind of thing. Having those saviors and having those implants definitely is a bonus, not a detriment. So, and you were talking Remaker just about faxes, right? So we did see. I saw in the chat we mentioned, hey, we saw a reduce in the fax reps, right? We talked about the fax reps and things not holding. Well, now there's diminishing returns. We've nerfed that penalty a little bit. Faxes, everybody's going to get about 20 to 25% more HP per second, as they roll out those faxes. So that's going to be exciting to see. And then additionally, our strategic cruisers got 60 to 75 additional power grade. Dave, can you take us? I know there's another slide here we have on Logi changes, and I'm going to talk here in a second. We're going to talk a little bit about what is for Logi. Okay, no worries. So basically, the other changes is each one of the Logi cruisers got, Chad, if you're not tracking on this, they got additional like individual buff, with your Eores getting a reduction in the amount of mass that it gets when it puts plates. We saw the Scimitar get a reduction in the Sig bloom that it gets when it fits like shield extenders, that kind of thing. And we saw the Guardian and the Bassi get an additional HP bonus when it fits either shield extenders or armor plates. So we're going to see some really tanky Bassies. We're going to see some really tanky Guardians out there. But what does all this do to the meta, right? Like, this is really cool. We're seeing Logi get buffed. What does this do to the meta? And I will tell you, we talked about this a little bit on our show 2 weeks ago with the FC Roundtable. On this gives smaller groups, mid-sized groups, more options when they're on field to be able to punch up. It means they don't have to bring a fax on field, right? Hopefully. And there's another part of the changes that were announced that will play into this. But they shouldn't have to bring a fax on field. That shouldn't be the first option to try to punch up, which means they don't have to necessarily worry about a capital escalation from whoever they're fighting to clear that fax. And Remaker, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I think it's great. And also, especially if you sign on, I know that you can refit. I believe you cannot take the without the covert, right? So you have a two on a T3s, right? You have a two how do you call it, subsystems, right? One you have four, but one is a covert and another one is for the which gives you additional bonus on wrapping, right? So if you fit it, you cannot take the bridge, right? Not through the black ops or the light blue signer, so to say, right? So you have to have a refit. But I think definitely that will help, right? And we should see less, we should see definitely more T3 logistics, and not dragging, like you said, the faxes initially in the initial response and or the heavy T2 logistic cruisers.
Yeah, I really hope with this change, and again, if you guys didn't get a chance to watch our show a couple weeks ago, I'd encourage you to go ahead to our YouTube page here. And Dave, if you have a link to that, just drop that in the chat for me. But our last show where we talked about some of the impacts and some of the challenges our smaller groups out there face when fighting, whether it be snuffed out or they have to go fight, Horde or somebody else. And it's like you always had to, some of these big fights, you had to bring a fax on field to hold. If you had any chance of holding T2, Logi in general, whether there's T2, T1, just wasn't sufficient enough in any of these big fights. You had to bring a fax. And what that meant is that you're bringing a fax on field, guess what? They're going to drop 5 or 6 dreads to kill your fax. You're going to try to counter drop, and it just goes up from there. It's like, well, people just didn't want to take fights for that. They're like, I can't stay on field. So really hoping, and I'm really excited to see what these changes are going to do for that kind of mid-scale content, in the middle of the game, that bigger size content, to see, hey, we're going to see more fights for this. We're going to see more fights without caps. Now, I know we all love caps, right? I may be one of the few people who's not a huge fan of caps and the big ships and the big spaceships in the game. I love my smaller content and all that other stuff. That's just where I grew up. That's kind of where I grew up in Eve. That's how I took it. But CCP didn't forget about our supers, our big boats. We want to put up the capital changes next. So, as I just said, supers, they got a pretty big buff, right? We're going to see bigger supers being able to really hold on field now, with super carriers going up to 400% bonus from armor or shield bonuses there, and Titans going up to 500%. And not only that, our Titans got some more love, right? They've got an additional 20% bonus, single target bonus to Doomsday. And then they got an additional skill book, which CCP's throwing more skills at us, chat. Additional skill book for the advanced Doomsday operation, which I think comes out to like 37% total when you get that to level 5. So yes, your hyper hell just doubled its EHP there, Ellie. So we're gonna see a big bonus for our supers and Remaker. I'm not a super, I'm not a capital experience here. I think Remaker's got more than I do. So I'll let him talk to this a little bit.
I think this is amazing. I this is the best thing on this update for me personally. I'm a capital super capital guy. I'm on my route to own all of them. I'm not far away. By the way, and I think that super capital fleet should cost what it costs. I think it should requires a lot of skills, right? I'm all fine with all that, but then make it a worthy of that ISK, right? Also, if they're worthy of that ISK, then you will see them more on the battlefield, and you will see them more. We're gonna lose more because we're gonna put them in the wars on the field, right? And then also CCP will achieve their goal where we're gonna put the ISK out of the game, right? So I think this is a really good change. We're going back to the early stage when we had a HP. I think that everyone was looking for this for a long time, because what they did is they made it 5 times more expensive, but then they reduced the capabilities of these um, super ships, and I think that doesn't make any sense. And then wondering why the people or alliances are not utilizing these ships, because it doesn't make sense, right? You would rather have a 50 or 100 dreadnoughts for the same price of the Titan, right? And I think that the super carriers and the Titans giving that, going receiving that buffer, I think is amazing. I think it's a long waited. Everyone were talking about this. I think we mentioned a couple of times in the past as well when we're covering industry, and and also regarding the Doom, I think that's also great addition for skills. I don't mind. I really don't mind. I think it's end goal. That the Titan should be end goal. And when, even for the newer players, when they ask, what is the end goal, right? I want to get to that Titan. And then the older member says, you don't need that ship. You're never gonna use it. You're gonna, keep it in your garage, so to say. You're never going to undock it unless you're bridging something, right? That's already like, losing motivation to get to that point, to have to need so many skills and grinding your your skills for a year or 2 years, right? Like, why would you do that? Why would you go through that process if you don't if you cannot utilize? What I would what I would expect, or what I would suggest them to even have create a content for the super for the Titans, actually, so that which is rewarding. So we actually get them on the field. We lose them also, right? We get dropped and so on. I think currently is they did a first step now, how to also make the people to go out, and do something with it. And I think if you invest the 2 years of skilling, if you spend so much ISK, you should be able to earn something with that ship, right?
Yeah.
But I'm
No,
going back
definitely.
to
And
you. I'm too excited about this, Kate.
no, that's awesome. I can definitely tell. The one thing I will say, I disagree a little bit, and I don't see them necessarily as an end game goal. I think people get into EVE Online with this idea, the traditional MMOs mindset of, hey, I want to go and what is max level? I want to get to max level in the in-game content. In-game content in Eve is just living, man. It's vibing. It's making friends and making connections. I mean, and today I'm gonna get a little sidetracked from this conversation. I was in a Sino Vigil with some friends of mine out in LoSec, and I know we're an OSEC group, but I got invited to a Sino Vigil and was on that, and I was hearing some of the stories that these guys were getting really emotional about those connections. And one of the guys said, it's somebody I've never even met, and just bringing somebody to that, having that emotional visceral reaction to losing somebody that they flew with all the time. And I really think that's the end game of Eve, is building those friendships and getting with a group that you're connected with and you're friends with, and they would do whatever it was to fly with you and that kind of thing. I think Titans are, personally, I think Kane said it in the chat, are a strategic asset. They're a tool. They're like, I've got all these tools in game and they're different types of ship. What job do I need to get done? And I think Titans, for a while, because of this, like because of the reduced HP they had and that kind of thing, they didn't have a clear role, right? They didn't have, like,
Yeah.
you could field Titans to counter dread bombs, but it's like, why? Because you're still probably going to lose a Titan, and you're already behind the game then if you killed 30 dreads and you still lost a Titan, right? Like,
Yeah.
what did they achieve? And hopefully what this does is it solidifies more of that role of the ultimate escalation, right? Somebody's going to drop caps on you. Well, I'm dropping supers on you, and you're not going to kill my supers. So I
Yeah.
think the other, Ellie, you use your super to leverage more wealth. Yeah, 100% they can be wealth modifiers, but Remaker, I'll hand it off to you, Dave. If you can take us to the fighters, and we'll go into the fighters next.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, to correct myself really quick around that. When I said end goal, from assets perspective, I would agree. Not, from the end game
Yeah.
experience
Okay.
overall, just from asset perspective. Yeah. Um, yep. I will. So for the fighter changes, is a Dave with us? Oh,
Yeah, we
there
got
he
him
is.
up on the. Yeah, we got him up. So the fighter changes. We talked a little bit about like carriers. I know Kane said, hey, he wanted to see fighters, have a little bit more role, and I think this doesn't do much for like our T1 carriers, right? Our normal like jump carriers that they're still in an awkward place. I think they're still in an awkward place. However, this does increase the damage of our ships. So our supers and our light fighters, that kind of thing, it does get a 50% increase to how much they can do, which hopefully, we talked about this a couple weeks ago as well, people will be more likely to bring them out and crab with them. Because I can say some of my favorite content in this game was when I was taking 5 or 6 dudes out, we catch a carrier ratting, and we have to deal with the escalations that come with that, and then maybe eventually kill a harrier. So we'll see. Maybe this will help see people be more motivated to bring their carriers out and rat with them. Kane, you don't count. I don't care. You're a bitter old man who has been playing Eve since beta, and you're tired of it. So you can say hell no all you want, but whatever. The unfortunate part is we've seen a 75% reduction in damage from those space superiority fighters, and those space superiority fighters I know were used to like slap Kikimoras and that kind of thing, so they're not going to be very effective at doing that anymore, and they're going to be used to do what they should have been doing just before, is killing other fighters. But I still think it's an awkward position because realistically, in how many big fights are we sending out those SSS fighters to go shoot super fighters and that kind of thing. I don't know if someone has an answer for me. Go ahead and tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it happens that often.
I think I wanted to say that, like, regarding these space superiority fighters, I think that we're gonna see some small adaptation or changes into, for example, crabbing, because the space superiority fighters were used also heavily in the crabbing, right? Because they're faster, and it's better application, right? So I think there'll be small impact there. Um, and then also, I disagree that they shouldn't be able to fight the smaller stuff, because if I have a ship cost with a fitting 70, 80 billion, and then two frigates can hold me forever on the grid, that's, for me, that's disastrous, right? Same as with the Titan, right? The same problem. I don't know. I don't think that this is. I do. I do think it's good in some sense, because space superiority, the initial thought behind this was exactly this, right, in the first place. So they shouldn't be able to fight the small stuff. But again, I had a one experience, Kate, like, for I think I think a week ago approximately. I was doing the crabbing with super, and then three frigates came in, and I almost killed the first one instantly, right? He warped off immediately. So he was scared, and they got away. Now I don't think I'm gonna be able to apply that damage anymore. So they're just gonna surround me, kill my grabbing beacon, just um and play with me basically. I won't be able to do anything to them. So I don't know. It's like pros and cons. I think it's definitely good for smaller PvP players, but for those owners of these super capital ships, not sure about that.
Yeah, I wonder if to like first of all, like if it's just three frigates, correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't think they could hold your super there because you do have that warp core bonus. It had to be a hick or a
Oh, you
dictator
need a
that would
dictator,
hold it.
right?
Yeah, a dictator. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how well you apply to a dictator with light fighters. I know light fighters can at least effectively kill battle cruisers and battleships. So yeah, I definitely see like it does create. I think supers will have a role because you use supers and escalations with titans, that kind of thing. Like I think heavy fighters are really effective in killing dreads and all that other stuff. But I will say, like moving forward, like carriers is where I think where the biggest question will be. And like, yes, they're going to get a damage bonus, right? Um, so maybe they may be using routing, but I think you're right. Their tool set on just taking out subcaps when they do get tackled and how do they defend themselves is very limited because a carrier can be held by an interceptor. I will tell you how many times I've taken a malediction, a plated malediction, and just orbited a carrier, and I can outrun its fighters, mitigate enough damage, and the damage I do take, it doesn't matter. I can hold it indefinitely, right? So I think like yes, like carriers I think are still in an awkward role, but carriers have always like I feel like CCP is always over indexed, right? They were either really strong for a while and they could kill anything, or now we've seen it where it's just like, what do I do use a carrier for? And there's CCP's trying. I'll give them that. They given the MJD capability and that kind of thing and the ability to conduit, but it's more of a support. And it's like, well, why do you need a carrier for that? Why don't we just call it a giant space bus or something? Like I'm not talking about the Erebus. So everybody's like, we already have a space bus, Keith, but like a giant, like
I
it's
was
like a
about to
space
say
bus. It's
that.
just yeah, like right. We already have a bus, but no, but it's like I think somebody said it's like all it's good for is moving my ships around for me. Like when I go to deploy somewhere, like that's all it's great. So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think there's some stuff like somebody said make carrier capital command ships. I I would agree with something like that, giving a bonus to boost. I think that's how old triage carriers were used in a sense. Was they used to have links on them and that kind of thing as well, similar to what we do with faxes. But and that's the other thing we took away roles from them when we went to faxes and make them a capital command ship, and that's what Titans kind of meant for. But so I mean, yeah, they're really in an awkward role.
But yeah, I agree with you, Kate, regarding carriers. They're nowhere basically, right? Like
Yeah,
somewhere in the
yeah.
middle. They're not serving neither PvP or PV purpose. And And since introduction of the smart bombing Stormbringers, they lost even the rating points. So I think we necessarily need to change there. And guys, I was typing in the chat earlier. So what would you like to see being rebalanced, guys, in the future from the CCP? I definitely think they're on a really good path of rebalancing. They're definitely taking the feedback. So tell us more about this, guys. What you want to see?
Yeah, Mep, I see you
Back
mentioned
to
in
you, Kate.
chat there, the problem of lack of capital PvE content and crab beacons are full of. I mean, I would agree. I think there's a balance that CCP has to find, and how do you make capitals useful for more than just one thing, considering their price point. It's not like they're cheap to have and you only have one use for them. So, like, what can CCP? And I'd love to hear the ideas from the chat here, and I'll circle back to why here later in the show here. I know we've only, about 10 minutes or so. So if you hang out to the end, we've got definitely a big announcement there. But Dave, if we've got the pirate dread changes as well. I want to make sure we cover that today. Awesome. Thank you. So we've got the pirate dread changes here, which I know for some of you are like, oh man, this is exciting, right? I think my most excited, the one that I'm excited about the most, and I don't own one, but I might have to go save up for one now, is the Kamosh there, because that noticeable change right there at the top. Capital Energy knots don't care about SIG. So I don't know if you knew how Capital Energy newts and NOSs work before, or still do, or still will. They pretty much are useless against subcaps, right? You'd only use them against other capitals. Now the Kmosh, make it a Haldred, put a Capital NOS on there. It's going to screw up some subcaps there. So really cool to see that. Considering how expensive one is, it'll have some neat
Yeah.
utility. And in the Cayman, I know we talked about carriers being useless, but maybe all carriers should just be like the Cayman and be a dread with some fighters added onto it.
You are
Because
reading my
CCP,
mind, Kate.
right? CCP is really doubling down on adding additional fighters to the Cayman there and increasing its shield hit points overall, but giving it some more space for fighters. So it's definitely some cool changes to some of the more expensive dreadnoughts, which I like to think they're just you swinging around, being like, "Hey, look at how much money I have." But hey, as we mentioned in the chat, we're gonna see a reduction in BPC price and LP, or excuse me, IS price on the BPCs and the LP costs. So maybe they'll be more affordable for the masses here, right? No, I do not have a. Somebody's offering. Are you offering to sell me one for 70 bill? Because I'm definitely not spending 70 bill on a K-Wash. No, I do not. And so, and that's fine. So the Cayman and the Vehement are from Port. So I should reiterate that you're absolutely right. The Cayman and the Vehement can be bought with LP. The Kmosh is not from LP. So this would only affect, obviously, the BPCs for the Cayman and the Vehement. And the Vehement does get a nice damage bonus from 37% bonus to a flat 50%. So the Vehement will be, pretty fun. But again, it's still an expensive boat there. So no, it does not say anything about the Moloch. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're precious. For those of you who are so privileged to have a Moloch and have those kind of cool Titans, faction Titans out there, you definitely, I'm still going to say, have to foot the bill for that. But it is pretty cool for those of you who want to Cayman. Might be a little more affordable and you get some more fighters to throw out there, right?
And the point where you mentioned, Kate, that carriers cannot defend themselves, but by the simple against the small frigate, right? That could be a one solution, right? You have a plenty high slots on the carrier, and if you have a capital Nosferatus or the so you could fight you could fight these and remove their scram on you, right?
Yeah, 100%. But you could arguably put heavy newts on a carrier if you wanted to and have that same impact against like an interceptor. Like all it takes is one heavy newt, a cycle of heavy newt, make sure you're lined out, and you'll get away from an interceptor. It doesn't matter if they have cap. I mean, I guess if they cap inject the same time you hit your newt and you just get bad luck, they can keep newt on
That,
you or point on you. But generally speaking, you cycle your heavy newt and just spam warp, it's going to drop its point long enough for you to get away. So you could put heavy newts I think it's interesting because then you don't have to make a choice with a Kmosh because you are getting you're getting like you can just put capital newts on it and then be effective both ways. So obviously someone said in the chat, you're reading my mind. They did increase the resist. If we can go to the resist slide, what did they do to resist? You got that, Dave. Awesome. So again, I keep going back to this. This is really important because I just really want to highlight, some of the stuff we talked about a few weeks ago, and this was one of them. Rolling back surgical strike. I believe it was I want to specifically who mentioned CCP should roll back surgical strike. It would make the game fun. And I know that's coming from Snuff, and we may all have our opinions about Snuff here. Some of us like him, some of us are like, I hate Snuff, and I think that's where Snuff likes to be, as a polarizing group. However, that was feedback that was foreshadowed here a couple weeks ago. And what did CCP do? They rolled back surgical strike with this change. We're going to see an 11% increase to resist the benefits of resist modules, which means our supers that are getting an HP buff are just going to be tankier now. Our marauders are just going to be tankier now. So we're definitely going to see everything get a benefit from this. We're going to see before implants maybe some 140k EHP guardians boating around. Good luck killing one. I'm just going to say good luck if you're in a fleet fight and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and shoot the guardian. Yeah, good luck. Now, what I think this does do is it brings back something that I've seen, I feel like in Remaker, I know UFC a little more than I do, has gone away a little bit, is E-War. Do we think something like this, with the resist changes, the logi changes, do we see E-War come back and be more important in these fights?
So, like, I think, yeah, I think they did a change on Eores recently, right? I cannot recall right now, but there was a one major change, I believe, a month or 2 months ago on the Eivor specifically. I think they had something about the lighter doctrines on the frigates. I'm not sure I can recall that, but yeah, definitely that's gonna force the FCs to recheck their doctrines, right? Um, Now, how much is that gonna affect? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Like, I think we will need a more informations on this and see, in real time. Uh, Again, based on all this, like it sounds everything too good, to be true. Like I don't know. Like I think that again, overall, it's really those are amazing upgrades, but it's so scary that you kind of get a feeling that there will be a soon after, you know, um, a rollback of some of these changes, or like they're too powerful, so to say. I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see, Kate.
Dictator, you mentioned about the gold rush, and if you can elaborate on that? I just saw that in the chat. I'm not sure what you're talking about. So, and this could just be me being stupid. So, I mean, if there's something there, hey, I missed something. Feel free to elaborate on that. I'm just curious what you mean on what it could do to kill PvP. And somebody else asked in the chat if the resist increase applied to resistance boosts. I think this is just applied to the specific modules. The way I'm reading this, so your adaptive membranes and all that other stuff, your mid slots, your low slots, that kind of thing. Um, this says they care about where we farm and about the fight and salvage. I'll be curious. I'm not, so just full transparency for the chat. Yeah, so they call it a gold rush. I don't I don't make Iskin Eve. If I want to play, I'm at a place in my life where Eve is a hobby, and if I want to buy something, I call me whatever you want to call me, but I'll swipe my credit card and buy some Plex, and I'm like, all right, I got some Isk to go buy a new fleet comp for my friends, or I'm gonna go buy this ship. So that's why I don't own a Titan, because I'm not spending that much money to to own a Titan and fly a Titan. However, I understand for a lot of us, we go out and make ISK, and that's something that's fun. So, Remaker, do you know, as far as the Gold Rush is concerned, what he's referring to at all?
No, not at all. Actually, I'm
Okay.
not familiar with that. But I do
Yeah.
think that there are some. If you think about like armor resistance coatings, they're basically so cheap, they're not worth anything. Even the officers, you can get them for like 100 million. I think that might change.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
we'll see.
No, no, exactly. So, and then the key part about this is, and I like how CCP made this distinction here, is this brings resistances back where they were before Surgical Strike. So what I am reading from this Legion patch is we are rolling back the Surgical Strike patch, minus the thing that they haven't done is put that close range ammo damage back, right? Remember Void and all of a sudden blasters became, I'm going to do all the DPS in the world. They're not rolling that back. So we're keeping damage where they at, and we're increasing all just the resistance survivability of everything. Which again goes to my point on, hey, hopefully with the T1 Logi buffs, or the Logi buff in general, and then the T2 Logi ships, we can see that. Yeah, exactly. So auto cannons, all of our close range weapons back in that patch got a buff to that ammo type. We saw an increase in the amount of damage it did, and so everything just died all the time. And CCP was trying to break those stalemates that we saw a lot, and little did they know that the player base, I think the player base didn't know it either, that, hey, I don't want to throw my super on field and it die in like 30 seconds to 15 Nagas with blasters, right? Like, that's dumb. Like, I just spent like that. I just, maybe not even $1 billion is worth comp, just killed my 30 bill super, or they're more than that now. But so I think this will be great. I really hope with these changes, I'm really excited about all these changes. I'm not 100% like, are there some things that need to be done? I think carriers are still in a really awkward spot, and I would love to see carriers get to a place where they have a little more role in the game. Right now, they're more of like I said, they're a school bus for fleets, right? That's what they've become at this point. Even with the MJD field that they can do, they're just school busing siege dreads away or whatever. That's what they're doing. I would love to see that happen, but I think this is a step in the right direction. But that's going to bring me to kind of how we close out the show today. Dave, can you drop our Reddit post here that our good friends there that we're going to have? So if you check out that Reddit post next week, we are going to have some nullsec FCs, mid-sized groups, nullsec FCs, and I know I'm going to get some crap for this one, but you're going to go look at that list, and there might be a name on there that you recognize, and that person's going to be a headliner. We're going to have headliner on here. We're going to have Garst on the show here next week. We're going to have Nem from Boss. We're going to have BJK. We're going to have a couple other guys. We're going to have some dude from Only Fleets on the show. We're going to have Hanzo from Civ Squad on the show. And then Young Puke's going to be back, our CSM. Young Puke has really been headlining, I should say, spearheading the effort from a CSM standpoint to get this stuff back to CCP. And if you were on our show, if you watched our show here 2 weeks ago, CCP Bjorn B was watching the show. So CCP, made their presence known there at the end of the show. So yeah, okay, and that's, I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome that CCP was able to, hear the feedback that we're putting out. So we're going to have that, that feedback, get it back to CCP. And then 2 weeks later, we saw a lot of the changes that our roundtable put out there, head into, they got implemented, right? So, I mean, clearly, these guys are in touch with what the game's going. So we want to bring in, and then I've got, I'm trying to get one more person added to that list. I don't want to name any names yet until I, can confirm that, to add to that list to, kind of round out the table there. And, I know some of those guys, I know Headliner may not be this chat's, most excited person to see on this show. And we definitely have some opinions out there. There's some definitely polarizing names on that list. And I get that. But at the same time, these guys have been around in the game for a long time. Most of them, and they've done some, different stuff in the game. And whether you may not like them, there's probably someone else who does. So their opinions and their feedback is something we can all listen to. And hey, if you don't like them, I encourage you to be on the show. Be on the show next week. Watch our show next week. Get engaged with the chat. I'm not going to tell you to go trash them. But hey, you can challenge some of their thoughts and say, you know what, man, I don't agree with you or what you have to say, because of course we're going to be watching the chat, that week. So I encourage you to come back and watch the show next week. We've got some cool people. We'll do a panel similar to what we did last week, and that kind of thing. So, all right, Remaker, did you have anything else before we close out the show
No,
today?
I just want to say I'm so freaking excited about this. I think CCP is going in really right direction. I also think that Meta Show will have many dedicated shows in the near future about this update. We can see CCP is coming with a ton of changes, right? And there are so many. So guys, if you have missed the uh, if you have missed from CCP the uh, fan host and if you can go on their Twitch, you can visit. There is offline video. I know it takes like around 7 hours, but you can skip some topics and you will see there's so many guys we wouldn't be able to cover it in the next few hours. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's all. That's all for me. Kate, again, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. And
Yeah.
yep, thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Remaker, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today for the show. I, of course, appreciate you sitting here listening to me and Remaker talk about the changes. And as he said, there's so much more that I know CCP we didn't get to touch on, similar to like the new player experience, which I'm excited about to help motivate new blood into the game. And then also the changes for the color palettes around the corp ships to give us some more corp pride. So we flag our corp colors as we fly around, and I'm sure I can see already the alliance as far as goons, what their scheme might end up being. We can have some predictions. But to close out the show here today, again, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. We are looking to improve our content. So survey here, shameless drop. Take the survey, let us know how we're doing and what we're going to do there. And again, as always, we're trying to look at different content. If you want to hear us cover and me talk about some other video game out there, I think I've got over 200 games in my Steam library that I haven't played or maybe played once or something like that. So I'm down to talk about anything. But anyway, I appreciate everybody going here, and I am going to leave everybody today. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of FanFest. If you're at FanFest, definitely encourage you to go watch those videos. Thank you, and take us out, Dave.